Hello, I am Richard A. Boxall, and this is my short and almost daily podcast in which I chronicle my life and attempt to be a writer by writing daily-ish.
You're listening to the diary of a wannabe writer, Season 3.
Hello, today is Wednesday the 12th of August 2026. Welcome to the show. Sorry you haven't heard from me for a while. I've abandoned my idea of doing 300 podcasts this year because if I'm not writing, I know, this is a diary, but if I'm struggling to write, then there's only a certain amount of material I can throw out without it feeling a bit desperate. So, I'm going to just do, if something interesting strikes me that I want to talk about, then I will. Until I get back into the habit of writing. Just a quick update, I had my scan for my hip on Monday. Not that I saw the image, but it seemed to go okay. I've got a pre-op sort of thing on Monday coming, and then hopefully soon after that I'll get a date for the surgery. I can't wait. Actually, no, that's not true. I'm not looking forward to the surgery at all, but I am looking forward to the freedom it will give me once I've recuperated from it. But what I want to talk about now is what's likely to happen tomorrow, because tomorrow is the Clacton by-election, and as most people are probably aware, when Nigel Farage resigned, triggering the by-election, but then immediately standing for it, none of the other parties, or none of the major parties, decided to field a candidate. So what the man is pitching as, Nigel against the establishment has very rapidly become Nigel against the man with a bin on his head. Now, it would be absolutely wonderful if Nigel lost to a bin, but unfortunately I've been looking at the figures and that's very, very unlikely to happen for several reasons. So the first thing is they have been doing opinion polls, and yes, of course, Count Binface is likely to do quite well. So traditionally you pay £500 to be a candidate at the general election. And as long as you get 5% of the vote, you get that money back. So in the case of Count Binface, who normally gets less than 100 votes when he stands, he's never got that money back. It's called losing his deposit. So the first thing that's very likely to happen this time, for the first time ever, is Count Binface will keep his deposit. Now, as you know, you don't know this necessarily, but there are 34 candidates in total. Obviously, there's Nigel Farage standing for Reform. You've got Count Binface standing for the Binface Party, and then a total of 32 other candidates, including some monster raving loony party. I think Lawrence Fox is standing and a few other people. But the reality is, because of what the contest has become, it's going to be between Nigel and Count Binface. Now, the reality, looking at opinion polls and stuff, at the moment Nigel is likely to get 73% of the votes. Count Binface is likely to get 20%, and then the other, however many there are, 32, will get 7% between them. So, and the other thing you have to remember is this isn't a general election, it's a by-election. So a general election tends to have a better turnout. So if there are, in 2024, there were just over 78,000 people eligible to vote. 58.7% of those voted, so there were a total of 45,958 votes cast, of which Nigel got 21,225, so just under 50% of them. Now, because this is a by-election, the assumption is that there will be a lot less people turning up to vote. So the assumption is that there will be 37% voter turnout, roughly 29,000 votes. Now, going with the percentages I just gave you, it's estimated then that Nigel will get between 21 and 22,000 of those votes. Count Binface will get between 5,500 and 6,000 of those votes, and then the other candidates will receive between them a total of 1,500 to 2,000 votes. So that's what's likely to happen. Now, what this data hasn't taken into consideration is that if the people who are fiercely anti-Nigel all turn up to make the effort to vote. And if they all vote for Count Binface, there is a tiny, tiny, tiny chance that actually Binface could win the by-election. But I've done some maths, and let me just have a look at my paper. So if that happened, you would still need something like a 70% turnout. So that's 12% more than at the last general election, and about twice as many, realistically, almost, as we're expecting to turn out in this. But if there was a 70% turnout and all the people who don't want to vote for Farage, if they all coalesce behind Count Binface, then the following could happen. So, let me just find, I did the maths earlier. So if there is a 60% turnout and 47,000 votes, and everybody coalesced behind Binface, who is anti-Farage, then in theory, Binface could win by a few hundred votes. I mean, that's the dream outcome. But when you've got to, when you remember that Binface is a joke candidate, the guy doesn't want to be an MP. One of the reasons he refused to do a proper political campaign was because then it ceased to become about the silliness of it and then would become a proper political thing. And it's not. He's always said it's a joke. It's there to prove a point. The interesting thing is if Nigel gets around 50% of the vote, then that and all the others consolidate behind Nigel, what would happen if Farage got 24,000 votes and Binface got 20,000? Okay, yes, Nigel wins the seat, but he's only just beaten the frigging dustbin. Wouldn't that be absolutely amazing? So that's, well, I would love there to be a massive turnout for everybody who doesn't like the man to turn out and vote for Binface. Very, very, very unlikely to happen. But even, as I say, even if Farage just beats the bin, he looks absolutely ludicrous. The least, so the three options that could happen are, firstly, he decisively beats the bin, which is what the polls are predicting. The second option is that he only just beats the bin. This would be a beautiful result because it would make him look ludicrous, and he'd still have to have the Standards Committee investigation as soon as he resumes his seat. And obviously the glorious option would be if Binface beat Farage. But remember, if that happens, the investigation into the 5 million stops. So although it screws up his career because he's beaten by a bin, he still doesn't have the accountability. So my favourite option would be if Farage just beats Binface, and then the Standards Committee carries on the investigation into his finances, and then they have to have another by-election because of what happened, in which he's not allowed to stand. That would be the best outcome for me. But we shall see. Right, I'm not planning to do a podcast tomorrow, so unless something absolutely superbly weird happens to make me want to, I will be back on Friday, which is the launch day of Tani Campbell's latest book, the case of the Bow Street Society, Volume 8, the case of the, let me get this right, Deadly Decoy. So I will be talking to Tani about that. It will be a longer than normal episode. It'll be about 20 minutes long instead of this has gone over as well. I'm supposed to keep to 6 and this is well over. But that one, we sat down and chatted for about 20 minutes about her writing and about just basically stuff related to the book and her short story collections and stuff like that. So anyway, thank you for bearing with me. Thank you for listening. Don't stare at the eclipse tonight, unless you're Nigel. In what case, Nigel, that's beautiful up there. What's that? Have a good long stare. No, don't use sunglasses, mate. I don't mean that. You get into trouble for saying things like, of course I don't mean that, Nigel, because I would hate you to be blind. What I'd actually like you to be is beaten by a bin. Oh, anyway, yes, that's me. I will be back on Friday. Thank you much for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to The Diary of a Wannabe Writer, presented by me, Richard A. Boxall. Thank you for tuning in to my cogitative considerations, and if you'd like to know more about me or my projects, visit my link tree on linktr.ee/Richard Writes. Capital R, capital W. Thank you for listening.